Okay, we are live. So firstly, thank you everybody for being here. I'm Bethan and I'm one of our product managers at ThoughtBot. For anyone not familiar with ThoughtBot, we're a product design and development consultancy that helps make your product and team a success. So one way we do that, and the reason we're here today, is with our startup incubator program, helping founders on their journey. So what is the Incubator? The Incubator is an 8-week program for a founder to validate or invalidate their idea through lots of market research, interviews, and eventually coming up with a product plan. We've just kicked off our 4th season of the Incubator, and today we are joined by Diana from Womanish as well as Jordan from ThoughtBot. If you're here, please give us a shout out in the comments. We'd love to say hi to you. And if you have any questions for us along the way, please feel free to put those in the chat as well. We love to make this as an interactive experience as possible. So, quick round the room. Would you like to sort of kick us off and introduce yourself, Diana?
Sure. My name is Diana. Thank you, Bethan, for the introduction. But yeah, my name is Diana Gray. I am the founder and CEO of Womanish. Definitely super excited to be working with you all. A little bit about my background. I've been in growth acceleration and marketing for around 10 years. I am very passionate about serving underserved communities and women empowerment. And so that's kind of how we're here.
Jordan, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm the director of product strategy at ThoughtBot and sort of the main person helming the incubator program that we launched last year. My background, I began my career as an engineer. I was an engineer for 10 years. Then I got into product and spent the 10 years before I joined ThoughtBot in early stage startups, either as the first head of product or as a co-founder. So I've co-founded 2. And I've been the head of product at 2 other ones. And now I'm trying to bring all of the lessons from those experiences to bear on behalf of new founders working with ThoughtBot.
Perfect. And I'm Bethan, as I mentioned. I'm one of our senior product managers at ThoughtBot. I've joined the incubator with the ThoughtBot team for this season. Very excited, very much enjoying everything we're working on at the moment. My background is originally in fintech and accountancy, so working on legacy products and then also startup products, working those through the customer discovery experience. So now introductions are done and out the way. First sort of topic that I think we wanted to kick off with is question for Diana. What was the most surprising thing that you learned this week?
I would say the most surprising thing I've learned this week is, I guess one of my assumptions was that, people maybe like 24 and up were probably in a space where they were looking to connect based off of like their professional or, career development. But I think in a lot of the user surveys, most people actually prefer to not have connections necessarily around professional things, but more so around like their interests and identities. That was something that was more important to them, I would say. So that was something that was really interesting to me, seeing as I'm only in groups around, professional and like business development. So.
Jordan, what is then your sort of most surprising thing this week? Is it similar vein or something?
Yeah, actually, you stole mine, Diana. That was totally going to be mine. It was really surprising, but the more I thought about it, I don't know if this resonates for you as well, Diana, but like, it's almost like the shared professional identity is sort of the foot in the door. But when I really end up with like deep relationships with those folks, it tends to be for other reasons, right? Because there are lots of people who broadly do what I do or whatever? Why would I be good friends with this one and not with this one? And so it's sort of unsurprising once you kind of think it through. But yeah, that was surprising to me as well, that folks they're looking for something more than that. And of course, that's what our friends end up being, a lot more than that. But that was my sort of aha moment too. And that's been the result, I want to say, of surveying the Womanish community in the last week, which we have had a spectacular response to. And if anyone out there is listening, is from the Womanish community and wants to help us out, we'd love to chat with you. And definitely fill out the survey if you haven't already. But we got a spectacular response from it. Almost 120 people. It's 119 at current count replied, and it's just it's been like a real wealth of information for us, and surprises, including that one. What people are looking for from community.
Yeah, I really enjoyed sort of, obviously, data background for me. Any kind of data, I'm like, get very excited. But I've really enjoyed digging into that and sort of like creating sort of a more rounded understanding of the people that we have in our community at the moment. So very interesting insights there. So looking into future endeavors, what are we excited for next?
Me? I would say I'm very excited to find this gap in the market. I feel like I've been saying that since day one. I'm like, we need to find like this disruptor that, is not currently been provided in the market right now. So that's what I'm really looking forward to finding.
Yeah, agreed. We've just gotten to the point where, and this is right on schedule, and you can't hurry love, but you can't hurry the alignment, the team alignment. We all need to get on the same page about where the project is at, what we understand about the market, what we understand about the work that's already been done. And I think we're just getting to that with this survey of the community, the other user interviews that we've done in the past several weeks, and then additionally this competitive analysis we just kind of put the cherry on top of today. Sort of really, we're now in a position, I think, as a group, from a shared place to identify those holes in the market that Womanish might fill with technology. And so it's really exciting. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we'll start to innovate from a place of shared understanding. So it's very exciting. And I'm guessing by the end of next week, we're going to have, the beginnings of a clickable prototype, which is always really exciting as well. So yeah, this is the moment where things start to, up until this, it's always like the programming it feels kind of murky. It's like, what are we doing? Like, you have days where you're like, do we even know anything about anything? You get very like philosophical. But it always kind of goes this way. And then you always, it sort of crystallizes in a moment. It feels right. And I think we're really kind of at that moment right now, which is great.
Yeah, I definitely echo all of that. I think personally, for me, the exercise that we did this morning around meta analyses and sort of sharing our assumptions and understanding like unique value propositions and potentially identifying opportunities, your standard SWOT analysis, really. Yeah, really big turning point of all the gears are sort of starting to shift into place. So really excited to kick off really design sprint next week. So on that, how have we found working together as a team? Anything you particularly enjoyed? Any challenges?
It's been absolutely terrible. No, I'm just joking. You guys have been truly amazing to work with. Yeah, I mean, just everybody's flexible. I feel like we're just like a huge team. So yeah, nothing bad to say at all. You guys have been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, from our side, I would say, Gianna, that you and Danielle have been really remarkably willing to like sort of entertain every question, like you're remarkably undefensive. And I say that as a former founder who was quite defensive. Like I'm not, this is not throwing shade at anyone but myself. But you know, we've questioned the fundamentals of everything about what you all are doing and have done, and you've been totally great sports about that, and like willing to have the conversation, willing to walk us through painfully and multiple times, like what your thinking is, which is really the job. I don't know, like newsflash to all you aspiring founders out there, is that that's what you spend the bulk of your time doing, is explaining to other people what you're doing and why, what you're doing and why, what you're doing and why. Turns out nobody else on earth but you has spent 24 hours a day thinking about this thing for the last several years. And so they're constantly, you constantly get people being like, have you thought about blah? And you're like, what do you think, man? What, do you think I haven't thought about that? Come on. But so we've been doing that to you all, and you've been just completely good sports about it and walking us through. I know I've asked you the same question at least 4 times about certain things, and you're like, hey, just a reminder, the last time I answered this question, it's the same answer. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But that's really the job, and convincing more and more people of your vision is sort of like, you know, the near term, you know, you've got to get employees excited and customers excited, investors excited. And so that's kind of the job. So hopefully this hasn't been like too irritating and has functioned more as practice making your pitch. You got to pitch us. You got to pitch everybody. You got to pitch yourself, frankly, some days, right? Some days you wake up and you're like, oh my, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been great.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
I always have to kind of pinch myself a little bit, because obviously at ThoughtBot we are fully remote, and we've been fully remote for a while, so we've already got like working practices and things work. We have a system, and it's fantastic, and it enables the opportunity to work with people all over the world, and you know, of all different diversities and inclusions, to make sure that we can sort of come up with the best possible product. So just to see, it's a nice to have a fresh perspective to like remind ourselves how like well-oiled the remote machine is, and just sort of being able to collaborate across everybody's time zones. Okay, so thinking about the work that we've done in the last week, do we have a favorite exercise? Has there been anything that's helped us to frame the problem or understand our customers a little bit more?
I would say I really liked, excuse me, I really liked the competitor analysis. I think that, you know, and I liked how we broke it down into kind of categories as well, just to pull out the different findings from kind of like each aspect of Womanish, I thought was really good. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I would say, you know, doing the survey, I always find it really, really helpful just coming up with the questions for the interviews and for the survey really drives a lot of alignment. Like, what do we think to ask, and how are we going to ask it, and at what point in the conversation? Doing that together as a team, you really draw out a lot of folks. A lot of this work is just about drawing assumptions out of ourselves. It's, if I just walk up to you and say, like, what are your assumptions about the world? You're like, oh, like gravity exists? What do you mean? It's like a hard thing to just sort of drag out of yourself. So a lot of the exercises at the beginning of the incubator, or at the beginning of any effort like this, are really designed not to come to a conclusion, but to make sure we're getting everything out of each other's heads that we can, in as complete and as like non-judgmental a way as possible. Like, we're all walking around with assumptions and biases, and it's just better to know what they are so that they don't sort of blindside us later. So the script writing and the coming up with the survey questions, I feel like was really great in helping us figure out sort of like, what are we trying to find out? Why are we trying to find that out right now? Like, we could ask myriad questions of lots of people, but why these questions? And then on the flip side of that, the fact that we got such a spectacular response to the survey, like analyzing those responses, was a really great exercise as well, where we got a lot of value out of that. And there were some surprises in there, I think. So, including the one that we mentioned earlier about folks are just like, connecting with other people purely around professional identities. It doesn't meet the need fully. Anyway, those have been my faves this time.
Nice. Yeah, a shout out to our customer discovery playbook on our website if people want to learn more about the sort of exercises that we do on the Incubator program. Actually, for me, we're doing an exercise on assumptions mapping and sort of working out how high risk they were for the project and how much confidence we had in those. And it was very much a retrospective on that. So once we've done some interviews, learned a lot about our survey, coming back in on that and saying, okay, right, what have we validated? What have we not validated? And just moving everything up on the board and realizing just how much we've learned. We've learned so much in such a short space of time. And being able to tick those off was like quite a grounding moment for me. We were just talking about sort of interviews and interview scripts. Now, obviously, we've done quite a few iterations of these over the last couple of weeks. Any top tips to maybe share around writing interview scripts?
I would say just making sure that you know what you want to learn from the community, or what you want to learn from this survey, and then forming questions around that are open-ended, I guess, but also still get you the answer that you want. So we have learned that there's definitely a finesse, I don't know if that's the word, but a craft, it is the better word to doing that. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that would be my top line item as well, is really getting clear on what it is you're trying to learn, and then crafting your questions to get your interview subjects talking about those things in their own words, on their own pace. I mean, it's an art, it's a craft. It's not, it's a hard thing to just like sort of let happen. And especially as founders, you often want to go into those conversations and be like, here's what we're thinking about doing. Is that a good idea? But like, you're not going to get usul information out of a person if you frame it that way. And it's really hard. It's hard because there's a lot of moving parts to those conversations. And so getting the nuances right, it's iterative like any other thing. So, it's you do your best job with the first draft of the script, and then you have one conversation and you come back and you're like, hey, that script sucks. Let's talk about how it needs to change. And often what ends up happening is you end up with fewer prompts. So it's really better to think about the questions as prompts rather than questions, right? You don't want to be like, your deterministic questions are not going to get people talking about their lives. So, walking into a call and being like, tell me about yourself. It's hard to do, right? You feel like it's going to stress the other person out, but it turns out we're human beings. We're all like, oh, and then, you tell you about myself. And then wherever the person decides to start with their answer is so informative. Oh, is this a person who thinks about their professional identity first, or their personal identity, think about their identity as a mom or a spouse? Like, so nailing that, making it feel conversational, but also like prompting folks in a way where it gets them talking. It really is a craft. And that's like my top tip, I guess, is like anyone out there thinking about doing this, which PS, if any of you out there have a business idea and you have not started interviewing potential customers about it, please start today. Start today. I know what you're going to say. Oh, I'm not ready. I still need to. No, you don't. Go talk to someone. Write a script right now. And that script should probably start with, tell me about yourself. And then you get to kind of gradually drill into the area that you're interested in. So then it's like, okay, tell me about your current role. So then they tell you about their job. All right, tell me about what your biggest pain point is in this job right now. Basically, if you're doing any kind of B2B app, I just gave you your script. Go take the script I just gave you and go interview someone today. No, today. I know what you're saying. I don't have time. No. You're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Write to someone. Be like, can I talk to you about this? Okay. Sorry. This is my soapbox. Hear a lot from founders who are like, I'm not ready. I don't know what to ask. I don't know who to talk to. Yeah, you do. Or maybe you don't. Who cares? Just start. You'll figure it out. The only way you'll figure it out is by talking to people. Ask open-ended questions, but more importantly, talk to people at all. Don't belabor the script. Okay, I'm going to stop with the proselytizing.
I love it, Jordan. I think one of my learnings around the script was that it's okay that it's not static. So often when you're thinking about experiments, you're like, oh, I want to control this experiment. Like, I want to make sure everybody's asked the same thing, but then you're not sort of learning as you go. And as you say, working out how to ask those open-ended questions and sort of get the answers you want without leading your audience. So yeah, the script not being static, totally okay. Like, process and learn and continue as you go. And then sort of drilling down like that level further. I think we had a nice delighter moment when we were using user interviews. We decided to experiment with open-ended questions on the screeners, and we actually got some quite nice delighter answers coming through, and a lot more information about our customers, which helped us sort of decide who we were screening. So yeah, so top tip on sort of a granular level there. Nice. So, other questions that we have for the team today. Also, if you are following along, do feel free to put comments in the chat. We will sort of have a look at those and see if we can make this as interactive as possible. But yes, so in product, we often talk about aha moments. And Jordan, you mentioned one earlier today. Sort of, is there anything reflecting over the last couple of weeks that stands out? Any assumptions that we've thought and learned about in the market that perhaps weren't expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too into this because I don't want to give away this special secret sauce. But we did we had a couple of market segments that we went out focusing on initially that we kind of quickly invalidated as being good candidates, but for different reasons. And I think there's something really instructive in that. Like, one, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, one of them we disqualified around like willingness to pay. And this is something that I think a lot of founders, myself included, just sort of don't think about early on. It's like, let's just get the demand, let's get the use space, and we'll figure out how to monetize later, right? Yes, yeah, but also no. You kind of have to figure out at some point. You at least have to have an idea of like how you're going to make the thing you're doing a business, even if you don't immediately start charging people, right? And so that was a kind of surprise. We had an assumption that this group of people would have money to spend on connection and community and networking, and we were wrong. It turns out, okay, great. Better to know now, right? After a week of validation work than like, I don't know, building something for a year and then being like, oh, whoops. So that was an interesting thing. And I, honestly, the insight about looking for connection, I think it's like maybe around the lines between professional identity and personal identity when it comes to connecting with other people are not nearly as cut and dried as we maybe like to think. Is sort of one of those things. And I don't know that there was the assumption was people are looking for professional connection. And I think we weren't like, that's not true. We realized that it's more, the story is more complicated and nuanced than that, which is great, because if it were a simple problem, someone else would have solved it already. So it's good to have that nuance, and it's good to have an idea of the problem. Yeah, I don't know. I would love to hear what Deanna has to say about that, though.
No, yeah, I agree. Actually, I think that I think that we're still kind of diving deep to find that, like, that that gap, I guess, that we're trying to figure out. But I think that we are definitely on the right road. I think that, just the data that we're pulling, the trends that we're seeing, I think that, we'll be able to really figure that out. So I'm really excited about that.
One of our other activities, like key things we've been looking at this week, and we touched on it earlier, was the competitor analyses. Any top tips around competitor analyses? What are we looking for? What are good markers?
I would say, I think that if you've done something right, nobody is going to be exactly like you, right? And so I think finding businesses that are, and I didn't mean to say that, not if you've done something right. It's fine. There's a bread aisle, there's different breads, it's fine. But I think finding businesses who are similar to yours, but they don't necessarily have to be exactly like your company. Like our company, we're an experience, we have a community, and right now we're building out a digital platform. And so there are different aspects within our business that are similar to other businesses. And so I think just finding the key aspects that you find valuable in your business, and finding a company that's similar, basically.
I want to have a go at doing what Jordan was doing earlier. Does my screen do it? No. Is this a Windows versus Mac problem?
It is. This is a Mac thing, and it's a latest version of Mac thing. So, and it only like sometimes works. Let's see if we can get it to do. Yeah, this one is good. There's a bunch of them. They come up. I tend to count by starting with my thumb, and so it often gives a thumbs up when I'm like, first of all, and I'm like, now I'm basically like, I think I need to start counting like this, so that it doesn't do that. Anyway. With regard to the competitive analysis, this is another thing that's a craft and an art as much as it is a science. But I think a lot of I think it's just such a critical exercise, and it's critical to just put your ego in a box for a second, to the extent that you can, which I realize none of us can, but it's so hard to do because you're having to sort of look at the market and be like, all right, in what ways are we not at all doing anything novel? And you don't want to acknowledge that, right? It's like a tough thing to grapple with. But like Deanna said, like there's always a space. There's always white space in the market. And you are special and have a special insight because you're a human being. So there's gonna be something different about you. And you can find a thing that is big enough to constitute a market opportunity, I guarantee you. But the only way to do that is to look honestly and stare in the face of what's out there and make sure you're not just like copying it with fewer resources. Like, oh, we're just like this, only we suck, is like not a good, compelling argument, right? And yet it feels like that's often what people are doing. Or conversely, they're just like, we have no competition. I mean, I hear this. I talk to a lot of founders. I see a lot of pitch decks. You really do see some people like, okay, who's your competition? And their answer is, we have no competition. And you're like, okay, I mean, the people are doing something right now. Whether that competition is spreadsheets or I don't know what, like paying someone to do the thing, like for you as a service, like you have competition. Maybe it's email, maybe it's text messaging. Whatever it is, you have competition because people are somehow managing to live their lives without you right now. So figure out what it is and grapple with it, like honestly, because it will only up your game. Like I guess that's the thing I wish someone had said to me when I was, again, that founder that was like, we have no real competition. I absolutely was that person. There's nothing in the market that looks like us. Like, really, Jordan? Come on now. Eventually we did. I will say I learned. I got to the point where I was like, yes, Google Sheets is our competition, and it's a formidable foe. This is my first startup, but But it took a while for me to like admit that to myself and to everyone else. But only once I did that could I talk about the ways that we were different, right? Yes, that is our competition, but we think we have a leg up on it in this narrow use case, which is the thing that we're focused on. Okay, cool. That's a much more compelling statement than just like we have no competition. So, my thought around this exercise is really to like, just think of it not like, is there a direct competitor who has the exact same idea or like positioning as you, but way more like, what are people doing right now instead of using your app when they're not? People have this problem. Some of them are not your customers yet, especially if you're pre-product. What are they doing? And, the answer can be a lot of things, but really grapple with that and the dynamics of it and how you're going to be a little bit better in some way that people are willing to pay for. That's the job. What about you, Bethan? Is there something about this exercise? I don't know. I put the question to you.
Yeah, I think the sort of exactly as you say, it's being able to work through what you've got, what's in the landscape, and we also categorize those into different types of competitors because there's obviously different industries that can overlap. Might sort of touch a side bit of something here and a side bit of something there, but really understanding that landscape to be able to find where your uniqueness is, and identify that a little more. The next question has gone completely out of my head. I was going to pull on to something you said, Jordan, there about trends in the market. So, for example, we've had conversations about investor decks and what a good investor deck looks like. And one of those things is having an undeniable market trend to be able to sort of fall back on. So I just wanted to pull on that thread a little bit more.
Yeah, this is another sort of like basic core concept that it just took me like way too long. I mean, a lot of this stuff Deanna has because she's coming at this from growth and marketing already. So like, good job. You already know these things. I could learn a thing or two from you. But another thing that was just like a real struggle for me as an early founder, I was just so focused on the product and on technical innovation that it was really hard for me to understand that like there are trends in the market. I mean, like high level trends, like, just like no one has a landline anymore. Okay. Like someone 10 years ago, 15 years ago in their pitch deck was like, we think there will be dwindling landline phones, right? Like, because that's like an inevitable trend. Anyone looking at how the world was going could be like, yeah, okay, duh, right? It's like you want to have some component of your market opportunity be tied to a trend like that, like an inevitable shift that's taking place. Now, if you can argue that you're early, you see it clearer and sooner than other folks. That's like ideal, right? If you're just like jumping on a trend that no one can deny is like already happening and maybe even over. Okay, well, that's like the landline thing. Putting that in your pitch deck in 2024, like, okay, that's not a good idea. Yeah, that's a trend that has already happened and left us. So it's really about finding those things that are just happening in the world, whether or not you capitalize on them, whether or not anyone capitalizes on them, and kind of making that a sort of basic component of your argument for why now, why you, why now, why this, is just has got to be part of your argument. And it could be a shift in demographics. It could be a shift in sort of how people think about the world. I think one of the things that it's very difficult to do sort of fluidly as a human brain is to realize that every time we introduce something new into the environment, we change how people we're changing people's behaviors, and that is then becoming its own market force, right? So it's like really hard. You're proposing a product today, given what people are like today, but if you have any amount of success, you're actually going to change how people behave. And then you're going to have to grapple with the market that you, in essence, made by changing it, right? And it's like a hard thing to stay on top of. But those are sort of the trends. There's like a trend in America. There's a trend toward electric vehicles, for instance, right? It's early. I don't own an electric car. I don't know if the two of you do. Bethan isn't in the US, but like I imagine that the next one I buy probably will be. This is like maybe the first time I've been thinking that. So that's like another high level trend that's like, okay, well, what does that mean for humans? Can we think through, are there some opportunities in that shift? Those are the kinds of trends that it's important to kind of grapple with. But in your space, obviously that has like nothing to do with what Womanish is doing. I don't know, maybe we've got some opportunity with electric car drivers. I don't know.
Listen, one of the things I tell my parents all the time, they always push me to be like an engineer. And I was like, no, I want to be in marketing. I want to talk to the people. And, now I'm like, I totally wish that I could just like go and build it, like anything that I see in my head, I can just go and build it out. And yeah, definitely. But yeah.
Although with AI, I don't know, maybe you slightly less useful than it used. It's still useful, but slightly less useful.
That's true.
I think especially there's been a bit of a trend on the low no code platforms sort of bubbling up a lot more over the last few years to help us. I'm excited to get our hands on those next to try and do our demand testing and validation testing of the next steps with Womanish. So we're thinking about so this is the 4th season of the Incubator program. And Jordan, I was just wondering how has this been different to sort of previous incubators that you've run?
Each one is different. It's got its own like special little flavor. I mean, what was really exciting to us about Womanish is sort of what's different about it, which is that you all have already been very successful in the real world. You've built a successful business, and you're looking to find the next opportunity within it. You have a community. I mean, that's great because we can go to them, right? Like that's what's often really difficult is we're sort of making a market or we're like uncovering one or we're trying to sort of access one. But you all kind of have one, a little market niche that you've established already that we can go to. Clearly, we sent an email and we got a bunch of responses, which was just fantastic. So that's been really different. And you all, you've just done a lot of that sort of initial community building that we're constantly trying to sort of help founders do, but you kind of already did it. So like that's been really interesting and different and has given us a lot of different information to work with. It's always just a matter of like what people come to you with already, and it's always just like a different sort of collection of assets. I think of it like I think I've used this metaphor before, probably in a live stream, and it definitely dates me. And so I apologize if this film reference is not one that any of you get. But there's a moment in The Princess Bride, a film from the late 80s, early 90s, I don't know, that I watched a bunch as a kid, where they're kind of trying to figure out how to storm the castle as like 3 people sitting on a wall, and one of them being like incredibly unable to do anything, like move. And Wesley's like, what are our assets? Like, what do we have? Right? Like what we need to do something. We have a goal and we have things that we have right now. What we need to assess what we can do with them. And that's very much what like this early stage work feels like. It's like you're trying to storm the castle. What do we have in our hand? What do we need to acquire? And so you all walked into the incubator with a sort of different set of things than we've seen before, which has been super fun and great. We've also never worked with like a family team, which is great. You all like, have your own dynamic that I think is lovely. And so that's another kind of fun aspect of this. But we can also kind of, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be sisters regardless of what happens with this company, right? Which is nice. it sort of takes some of the like stakes off the table a little bit in a way that's very helpful.
Yeah, I would say that's like the big pro of doing business with my sister. There's a lot of cons, but I would say the biggest pro is that, regardless, she's always going to be my sister. I can't get away from her. I always tell her, I saw you take your first breath, Miss Gray. So, deal with it.
That is awesome. Okay, so I think that wraps us up today. But if you would like to stay updated with our live shows on the Incubator News, go to thoughtbot.com/incubator for more, or check out our blog posts for more information. Our next live stream will be in about 2 weeks, where we'll hopefully talk all about progress on the product side. And as we mentioned, we're kicking off with a design sprint on Monday, which will be super exciting. So thanks everyone for tuning in and participating in today's live stream.
Thank you. This is great.